Hello everyone, and Happy New Year for 2025. And so I recently have been looking back over all of the products that I tried during 2024, and I realized that there were 171 new releases that I have had a chance to try. And so most of those have actually been really, really good, but there have been some disappointments. And in general, the disappointments are not really because these are bad products, but because I bought them under the impression that they were going to be offering something else, or that I had hoped that the brands that were offering them were going to be offering products that were going to be especially well suited for me, and that they haven't worked out as well as I had hoped. And so what I will be doing today is to go over some of those disappointments for the year, and then in an upcoming video I will be talking about the products that I have liked the most for the year and doing just a general roundup of what I have experienced. And so first, a little bit of information about me. I am 60 years old and I have dry and very sensitive skin. And so I am looking for products that first of all help me to look a little bit fresher and a little bit younger. And in addition, I tend to be really sensitive in terms of the products that I use, and so I really have a zero tolerance policy with regard to products that do irritate my skin. And I have found that there are many products that contain ingredients that do always irritate my skin, and I know that other people tend to be irritated by these same ingredients as well, so I just don't talk about products that contain those ingredients on this channel. And then in addition, I tend to like a kind of a subdued makeup look, and I tend not to spend a lot of time working on my makeup. And so I'm really looking for products that give me that kind of a look and also that don't take a lot of time or energy or effort to put on. And I have tried an awfully lot of different products, and so in general I do have pretty high standards at this point for how I expect products to perform, and if they don't perform really well, then that is kind of a disappointment for me also. And so let's talk first about products that I have really liked in the past, but that are not going to be around anymore in 2025. And so that is definitely a disappointment for me. So the first one is the makeup line from Honest Beauty. So Honest Beauty is not discontinuing all of its skincare products, but they are going to be discontinuing almost all of their makeup products, it looks like, because all of those products are in the last chance section. So the product from Honest Beauty in the makeup line that I've been the most impressed with and that I have the most disappointment about are these Honest Beauty cream blushes. So these are blushes that I have found to be really better than almost any product on the market in terms of how well they last on my cheeks. I have found recently that the Mob Beauty cream blushes, which people don't talk about too much either, that those are a little bit similar in terms of how they go on my cheeks and how well they last, and they do come in a variety of different colors, and they're not terribly expensive. So I think that that would be my suggestion as a substitute for these Honest Beauty blushes. And Honest Beauty also had quite a few other different kinds of makeup products that I also thought were pretty good across the board, and I did do a full video on their makeup products at one point. And so if you're interested in maybe picking up any of those products, then you could take a look at that video. Now it does look like the other makeup product from Honest Beauty that I have liked the most is still going to be available in their skincare site, and that is their tinted lip balms. And I do think that those come in very nice colors, and they have been fairly popular, and so hopefully we will continue to see those in the future. And then the second company that is no longer going to be offering any makeup is Han Cosmetics, and they seem to have totally shut down, and their website just has a goodbye page on it. And I really did like a lot of the Han products, and I thought that compared to other much more expensive products on the market, that those were really quite good values also. And I did do a full video on that company. And if you are still interested in picking up any of those products, some of them might be available on Amazon or on Credo, but I don't think for long. They seem to be totally shut down. And another disappointment for 2024 for me was that Beautycounter had a lot of trouble and at least temporarily closed down. So this company was purchased a couple of years ago by a company called the Carlyle Group, and they eventually got rid of the previous CEO and owner of the company, whose name is Greg Renfrew, and they made a lot of changes. And then eventually they didn't sell enough products, and the creditors started to call in their loans on them. And so finally the company kind of shut down, and Greg Renfrew apparently got enough money to purchase the company back. And it has been shut down for most of 2024, but they did reopen their website to sell off the old inventory. And supposedly Greg Renfrew is going to be restarting the company sometime in 2025, and it might be with some other kind of a business model rather than it being an MLM. But in any case, I found that many of the products from Beautycounter that I tried in the past were really, really good, especially the skincare products and then also the makeup company products. And I think that it would be a real shame if those products were no longer available at all. And so I am hoping that we will be seeing those products back on the market again in 2025. And then another company that did some ownership changes in 2024 was Rose Incorporated. So this was a company that was started by a firm called Amyris, which was originally affiliated with Bill Gates. And this also created a line of skincare that I actually do really also like, which is called Biossance. But eventually Amyris did go bankrupt, and so the different companies that were owned by Amyris were sold off, and Biossance seems to have landed with the owner that is really proud of it, and so I do think that Biossance is going to continue on and to do well. Rose Incorporated got sold to a Hong Kong company for $2.5 million, and I really haven't heard anything about that Hong Kong company. And then the model that the company was named after, whose name was Rosie Huntington Whiteley, she has said that she's no longer affiliated with this company at all, and did it in a way that suggested that she just didn't want to be involved with them. And so therefore they're not at Sephora anymore, and I haven't seen them in any other retailers. They do still have a website. They are still selling products, but I'm not sure how long those are going to go on. And I've tried a bunch of different products from Rose Incorporated. I wasn't that crazy about their skincare. I did find that to be irritating. I thought that a number of the makeup products were okay, and I really do like this Skin Enhanced Luminous Tinted Serum from Rose Incorporated, and I just put this on today again just to see if I really was still liking it, and I really, really do still like this. I do think it's still one of my favorite foundations. It's kind of like the Chanel Water Fresh Complexion Touch product, but I actually think this one is better. And so it would be sorry to see this go, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if it just all disappears at some point. And so I think that it's kind of very sad when products that I really like just kind of disappear for random reasons, and that seems to happen a lot in the cosmetic business. And it does seem to be the case that if you are a clean beauty company, that you really need to be very careful about who you allow to invest money in your company and what their motives are, because there have been a few companies that have had really big cash infusions from investment bankers or other investors, and who have seemed like they were doing really well, and then eventually the money people just pull the plug on it and shut the whole company down. So that did happen to one of my very favorite brands, which was called Vapor, and that closed at the end of 2022, I think. And I still have a few Vapor products left, including their lip balms. I bought a little supply of their lip balms before they went away. And I still use the lip balms all the time, and I wish that someone would create a product that was just like those, because they are really nice. And also Aether was a company that made very nice eyeshadow palettes that I found to be really good. And though that company has shut down, I've heard some rumors that they may be launching a new palette. So that would be nice, because it was a nice product company. The eyeshadow palettes were kind of on the expensive side, but I did find them really fun to use, and that they did do well with my eyes. And then there's another company that I actually never tried, because they shut down right about the same time that I was starting to become interested in makeup again, called Lila B, and that one just kind of disappeared as well. And then there are some companies that are not shutting down, but that are changing their product lines to take away some of the products that I have liked the most and to introduce products that are totally useless to me. So for instance, Honest Beauty, two of the products that they offered that I really thought were terrific in terms of skincare were their Honest Hand Cream and also this product, which is called Calm Plus Heal Melting Balm. And this is a product that I sometimes used on my face, but that I often used on my hands during the winter months. And I thought that both of these were really terrific. One of the videos that I did, that was the first ones that I did for this channel, were on hand creams. And I thought that this hand cream in particular was really, really terrific. And then Necessaire is a product company that I liked enough to do a whole video about it last summer, and that has become my #1 body care company, and they are making a lot of changes too. So my very favorite product from them is a lubricant that is called the Sex Gel, and that is so much better than any other lubricant that I have ever found, and I think that a lot of other people really, really like it as well, or at least that seems to be the case from the user reviews. And that is in their last chance section as well, and a lot of people have written comments on the user section suggesting that they are really disappointed and upset about that. And so I'm not sure why Necessaire has decided to get rid of that product. I wish they had just promoted it a bit more rather than giving up on it. And there's also a neck cream that they are getting rid of. And more problematically even is that it looks like they are adding synthetic fragrance to a large number of their products, and in a lot of cases, the products that don't have any fragrance in them at all, that are fragrance-free, seem to be going away. And so I'm very sad about that, because I do think that an awful lot of the people that are fans of Necessaire really like those products because they are fragrance-free, and it might be the case that Necessaire wants to expand beyond that market, and that's perfectly fine if they want to add products that contain whatever kind of synthetic fragrances in them, but I wish that they would continue to offer the kinds of products that made people really like them, rather than totally abandoning that audience and going after other people and acting like anyone who suggests that there's a problem with this doesn't understand that synthetic fragrances can be safe. I'm not saying that I don't think that they are safe. I am suggesting that for me, they tend to cause real skin irritation, including with their shampoo. I got really big welts on my back when I used that shampoo, and also that a lot of people just don't like synthetic fragrance in terms of how it smells. Now, another disappointment that I tend to have is with makeup companies that launch limited edition products and that launch them for very short periods of time, and that most people don't even find out about them, or that they don't have a chance to buy them, and then they are gone even though the products are really good. So I don't think that's a very smart way to do business, and it tends to be very frustrating to customers, and I don't think that creating that artificial scarcity of products is really a good idea, for at least for most companies. Now, it is the case that companies like Chanel or maybe Dior do that a lot in terms of their limited editions. But I think with Chanel it makes a lot more sense, because from what I have seen, that people that have wanted to purchase these products have been able to do so. It's not like they've sold out within an instant, and people have had a chance to find out about them and decide if they wanted them, and then eventually they do go away. Now, on the other hand, if we look at a company like Byredo, every year they put out these eyeshadow palettes, and people really do love these eyeshadow palettes. And I do think that this eyeshadow palette, which was called Mineralscapes, this was one of my favorite releases for the whole year. But I had a very difficult time getting this product, even though I was really looking for it, because it would come on the Byredo website and then it would sell out immediately, and then eventually there would be a few more units that would come back, and it came into stock at some different department stores, and it sold out really fast at those department stores. And I think a lot of people that really wanted to buy it from the beginning never had a chance to buy it, and by the time that a lot of people heard about it, because people reviewed it or discussed it, that it wasn't available at all. So I think that's kind of crazy. And I do think that this is a really beautiful palette, and that it was a really expensive palette. And I would have been a little bit more forgiving if this had been the first time that this had happened, and if the company had said, whoops, we didn't know it'd be that popular, let's get some more of them. But in fact, this has been what has happened every year with different palettes from Byredo, and they never do another order of it. And I just think that's very peculiar. And then another product that is kind of similar to that is this Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes palette. So this was released, I think 2 years ago or so, and it came on the market. It sold out almost immediately, and then it took another year, and then eventually a few more of the units came into stock just on the Makeup by Mario site, and eventually those did all sell out as well, and now there is no way to get this palette anymore. And I can see that that might be a strategy that people would want to do with a palette that seemed like it was going to be kind of trendy and that a lot of people weren't going to be interested in. But this palette, I think, is much more usable than the permanent palettes that are in the Makeup by Mario line, because this one is one that I think a lot of people are really interested in, either because they think it would be a nice, soft, pretty makeup look for every day, or because it makes a really nice, for instance, wedding palette. And a lot of people think this is their ultimate wedding palette, and you can't get this at all anymore. And then another company that seems to be doing this sort of thing with eyeshadow palettes is Mercier. And so last year they came out with this palette that I really, really liked called Japan in Bloom. And this was just available, I think, on their website. It might have been available in a few other department stores. But I thought that this was an absolutely terrific palette, and all of the people that reviewed the palette on the website also seemed to think it was a really terrific palette, both in terms of how the shadow colors performed and in terms of the size of this palette. It's very space-saving and easy to use, and the colors are really gorgeous, and the actual shadow formula is really nice, and they didn't really promote that at all, and when it was gone, it was gone. And then what is even stranger is that they seem to do the exact same thing this year purposefully. So they came out with this palette, which is called the Winter Wonderment palette, and this doesn't really look that wintry to me, actually. It has all of these pastels that I think would be really gorgeous, especially for spring. And I found this to be a really, really terrific palette. They didn't really promote it. It was available at a few department stores in small quantities, but it never came to Sephora. I never saw it anywhere else that was more like a major retailer. And this was on the Mercier site for a while, kind of hidden. And then eventually it sold out, and now that is gone also, which is very, very sad. And then another company that has done some releases recently that I think have been gone way too soon has been Ritual de Fille. And so what they did for this Black Friday is they introduced several new shades in some of their more popular products, including their lipsticks and their blushes. And you could get some of these products either for sale, or you could get them as a bonus in terms of if you purchased a certain amount of products during Black Friday, and that's fine, but now those colors are all gone as well. And so, for instance, this is a color that I really, really like in terms of it being a blush, but I think that if you didn't pick it up already, then you are never going to get it because it's no longer available. And the next category is what I will call sneaky sunscreens. And so these are clean beauty companies, and they are offering products that they say are mineral sunscreens, but that actually do include unregulated chemical sunscreens, which have been dubbed sunscreen boosters. And I think that for a long time, people were not aware that these sunscreen boosters actually were chemical sunscreens that worked basically the same way that the regulated chemical sunscreens are used. But it has become very clear over the past year and a half or 2 years that it actually is the case that these sunscreen boosters are really just plain old chemical sunscreens, and that in terms of their chemical structure, in terms of how they sink into the skin and are absorbed systemically into the body, in terms of how they absorb sun rather than reflect it. In case of all of those situations, they're basically just chemical sunscreens. And so therefore, that's fine if people want to offer chemical sunscreens, either regulated or unregulated in products. I don't have any problem with that. I think that sun is a problem in terms of causing damage to the skin, and so that people should have options in terms of how they protect their skin from the sun. But the problem that I have is that, especially when a clean beauty company will say that a product is a mineral sunscreen, but then they will put these sunscreen boosters in them, because I think that that is misleading or deceptive. And it also is the case that all of those sunscreen boosters are very irritating for my skin. And so until I realized this was happening, I really had given up on using sunscreen products in general because they always were so irritating. And now that I've realized that I need to avoid those ingredients, I've been able to use sunscreens myself much more successfully. So the main sunscreen boosters that are actually chemical sunscreens that tend to be used in products include butyl salicylate, tridecyl salicylate, and then also ethyl ferulate. And then there's a few other products out there that are also in that same basic category, and one of those is called DESM, and I'll mention that in a few minutes with regard to another product. And so if we're talking about makeup companies, I think that some of the makeup companies out there that are claiming to be clean beauty and that are saying that they are just using mineral sunscreens, but that actually have these sunscreen boosters in the products. These include Tower 28 and Ilia and Kosas and now Ciel. And then in addition, the sunscreens that seem to be being promoted as being just mineral sunscreens and that are from cleaner beauty, supposedly companies, but that do have these ingredients in them are Mad Hippie, Versed, Iris and Romeo, Sarah Creel, and then also 11, which is a line of sunscreens by Venus Williams. And I think that Venus Williams actually created these sunscreens based on the idea that she didn't realize that these were chemical sunscreens that were in these products, because she was very, very interested in clean eating and clean beauty products. And I saw an interview with her that said that, that the reason that these work better is because of the spreadability factor, and that Credo had approached her and helped her with this. And I think that Credo is sophisticated enough in terms of the people that work on their staff that they have known from the very beginning that these supposed sunscreen boosters are actually chemical sunscreens, and that they have purposely kept that information from their customers, and also, it seems, in some cases from the companies that are putting their names on these sunscreens. And I think that that's really unfortunate. And earlier this year, I did write to Credo, and I talked about this issue, and I presented them with the research from these Harvard dermatologists that made it clear that these are actually just unapproved chemical sunscreens. Their response to me was not to deny it, but to suggest that people really need to be protected from the sun, and therefore that they're putting these chemicals into the products was a perfectly good thing to be doing. And I don't agree with that. I think that what we really need to be doing is to be being more honest to customers and letting them know what is in the products, and then letting them decide for themselves. And in terms of special disappointments to me this year, I picked up this product from Kosas, which was called BB Burst. And this is not even labeled as a sunscreen, but it did irritate my skin tremendously. And when I looked at the ingredient list, it seems to me that this is actually a sunscreen formula and designed as a sunscreen formula, but it's not labeled as a sunscreen. Maybe they didn't want to go through getting the regulatory approval for it. But this has zinc oxide as the first ingredient after water, and then butyl salicylate is, I think, the third ingredient after water. And so if I had known this was a sunscreen, then I would have been a little more dubious about it. And if I had known that it had about the butyl salicylate being a problem for me, then I would have definitely not purchased it. And it is the case that at least EWG has now labeled the butyl salicylate as being a problematic ingredient. They give it a 5 now, and they used to give it like a 1 or a 2. And so they have started to recognize the fact that this particular ingredient can be problematic, and hopefully they will do that with the other sunscreen boosters as well soon. And now let's just talk about a few products that I thought would work out for me and that did not end up being as good for me as I had hoped. So the first one is the Nars Light Reflecting Hydrating Primer Base. And this one is a primer that didn't irritate my skin at all, so I was happy about that. But I do feel like it emphasized the wrinkles on my face, and especially when I put it on my forehead, it definitely made my forehead wrinkles look worse. And that's a little surprising with a product that is just a primer. And so I think that for people that don't really have a lot of wrinkles, that this could be a really good product for them. But for me, it definitely did not work out. Another product that I picked up this year was this very expensive little concealer from Fara Homidi. Now, I'm not sure that the actual product in there is the reason that it's so expensive. I think that this case, which is very similar to the cases that Westman Atelier uses for some of their products, I think that the case is why this was so expensive. But in any case, I had hoped that this would at least be a good product for me and that it would look good on my skin and that it wouldn't be irritating. And unfortunately, it did end up being irritating, and unfortunately, it didn't really look very good on my skin either. I think that this is the kind of concealer that you need to really only use very, very carefully on a spot basis. So I did get out my little Westman Atelier spot check brush to use with it, and I did use it really, really carefully. But still, I'm not sure that it looked all that great on my skin. It wasn't a product that I felt like I could use under my eyes. And I also found that it definitely was irritating to my skin, and those, even when I was using it on a little bit of a spot basis. And then another product that I picked up this year that turned out to be a disappointment for me was this Rewind Complexion Stick from Ilia. And this product mostly was problematic for me because it did irritate my skin quite a bit. It was better when I put down my Ilia Face Base Primer, and that is actually a really good product. And in general, Ilia does make some nice products, but this one, I thought it looked okay on my skin. I don't think it looked nearly as good as the Bobbi Brown foundation stick that I do really, really like. And so I think that this one is kind of a copy of it, except it's kind of a poor copy. It doesn't perform as well on my skin, and it also does cause irritation, whereas that Bobbi Brown one never has caused me any irritation at all. And then the next product that was disappointing to me was this Prada foundation. And this one I, really shouldn't have purchased to begin with because I knew in advance that this included a chemical sunscreen called Solizol and also a synthetic fragrance or unspecified fragrance. And so I finally decided to give this a try just because everyone was talking about it, and a lot of people said that this was their favorite foundation, even though they had sensitive skin. But my skin reacted very, very, very badly to this, and it took me weeks before I got over trying it a couple of times. And so I would have liked to have used it, and I don't really understand why Prada needed to put either fragrance in it or why they needed to put a little tiny bit of a chemical sunscreen in it that really didn't really help that much in terms of people that want sunscreen, but for people that don't tolerate sunscreen, it just makes it unusable. And then the next disappointment for me was from Victoria Beckham in a collaboration with Augustina Spotter. So they created this concealer pen that was quite expensive and that had some of the Augustina Spotter skincare in it. And so I was enthusiastic about that. And I did try it on my skin, and I thought that it did look very pretty on my skin. I thought that it was particularly good if I wanted to cover over just very tiny little areas on my skin. Now, unfortunately, this product I realize does include a synthetic fragrance in it, and it is called ethylene brassylate. And this is a product that was created as a musk note by DuPont in the 1940s, and so it is definitely totally a synthetic fragrance, and I found this to be somewhat irritating the moment that I smelled it, and the more that I used this product, the worse it got until it finally started to give me real headaches. And so I wasn't able to use this, and of course when I let Victoria Beckham know about that, then they just automatically gave me a refund. So I was really happy about that, But in general, I am not quite sure why they felt it was necessary to put this synthetic fragrance in this product. It definitely seems to me to have been totally unnecessary. And then this product from Charlotte Tilbury, this is actually an example of a product that I think is really, really terrific, but that it was marketed in a way that made people not understand what it was going to be, and that therefore an awfully lot of people were disappointed by it. So this is a product that I consider to just be an ultimate cream highlighter, and so it comes in a variety of shades. And so if you want a highlighter that really just goes well with your skin tone and that blends in a way that looks really natural and pretty and is not even looking like it's a real highlighter, I think this is really terrific. So if I just put a little bit of it on my skin in general, just as a highlighter, I think this is the most wonderful highlighter that I have in my collection. But they did not market it as a highlighter. They marketed it as a hydrating foundation stick, and this is totally inappropriate for use as a foundation stick in general. I think even under makeup, it's not that great of an idea, but especially if you're expecting that this is going to be a foundation stick that you're going to use on its own. I have not found anyone that has thought that was a good idea. But I think that probably what happened is that they came to the conclusion that if they sold it as a highlighter stick, that the price that they wanted to charge would be considered to be really high, and that if they sold it as a foundation stick, the product price would be much more in line. But I don't think it's a very good idea to sell a product as something that it's not and then have people get upset and mad about it, when you actually could sell it and maybe sell less of it as a product that would be really what I consider to be the best product on the market. And then another product that I purchased earlier in 2024 that I think probably came out in late 2023 is this new pressed powder called Easy Bake and Snatch from Huda Beauty. And the reason that I decided to purchase this is because Huda has a loose powder that got very, very good reviews, and it might have been the most popular powder on the Sephora website, and that it did contain talc and that it did contain fragrance, and so I didn't want to buy that product. But then when they came out with this product that had basically the same name, this is called Easy Bake and Snatch, I decided to give this a try. And this one does not have talc in it, and it does not have fragrance in it, and it came in this new shade that it was just released when I purchased it, which is called Peach Pie, and I think that this was a really good shade for me. But in general, this was not looking very good on my skin at all. I don't think it performed well as a powder, and it also irritated my skin. So that was really frustrating, and I think that probably if you're going to introduce a line extension for a product of yours that is really popular, that maybe introducing one that people are really going to feel good about and that it's going to perform well is probably a better idea. Now, later on this year, they did introduce on their website an unfragranced version of that talc-based loose powder, and I did pick that up, and I do really, really like that product, so I agree that the original one was really nice, but this one did not work for me at all, and that was too bad. And then Kosas, Kosas is one of my very favorite pressed powders, and I usually use this in the shade Feathery, and so they introduced a new line of powders that were supposed to be brightening, but I kind of got excited about it anyway because they had this pink version of it, and so I decided that I was really interested in pink powders and that I wanted to compare them. And this one unfortunately doesn't really look pink on the skin. It actually looks quite white, and I think that it's really just designed to be more like a highlighter, or some people will put a brightening powder under their eyes. I'm not really interested in making my under eye area look brighter, but I think that if this had been just a regular pink powder, similar to, for instance, the Mob Beauty pink powder or the Jones Road pink powder, then I think this would have been really fantastic, because I love this formula, and because pink powders in general, when they're actually pink, I think that they do brighten my complexion in a way that makes them look prettier, and that I have a little more blood flow, and so I look a little bit more youthful rather than sallow. And so I would still hope that one day Kosas will offer a pink powder that's really pink and not actually white, pretending to be pink, because I think that would be terrific. And then I have the same complaint about this new product from Tower 28, which is called the Get Set powder, which is that this says that it is pink, but it actually looks very white on my skin. And in this case, I don't think this would be an appropriate powder for me anyway. I think that this is not really designed for people who have dry skin, and that it didn't really look very good on my skin, in addition to it not being a very good color for me. Now, in terms of face palettes, Natasha Denona came out with a new one that was supposed to be an all-clean beauty product. It doesn't have any talc. It doesn't have any aluminum powder in it. I thought the ingredients looked really terrific, and it didn't really irritate my skin. And this one includes some different eyeshadows, 5 different shadows, and then it includes a bronzer section that's powder and a blush section that's a powder. And in terms of these eyeshadows, these are ones that you can put on with your fingers. I think that they're a really different formula than have been used in any of the Natasha Denona palettes that I have used. And I think that these eyeshadows are actually really, really nice. I really do like them very much. And in terms of these other products that are in here, I think that they could have just come up with something that was a bit better to put in these slots. So this one here, it's very pink, and it's kind of leaning red, and I think that this is something that I could use, but it's not really a product that even I would use sort of on a regular basis. It's not really my go-to type of a blush, and I think a lot of people wouldn't want to use that color blush at all, and I think they could have come up with something that was much more universal. And in terms of this bronzer, you know, they put 3 different shades of bronzer in here, and I'm not sure that any of those shades would have worked very well for me as a bronzer. I think that they all look kind of on the grayish muddy side, and so it's more like a sculpting type of a bronzer, and I don't really want to sculpt my face at all. And I also think that probably, regardless of what kind of color bronzer you want, that having 3 different shades in here where you really can't get your brush in here and use it correctly, that's not a great idea either. So in general, while I think that these Natasha Denona formulas are all really nice, and the idea of having an all-in-one palette that you can just use, I think that that could have been really good. I think they could have used both of these slots a lot better, and it would have been a lot better for me, and it would have been a lot better for a lot of other people. So I hope they don't give up on this idea entirely. And what I think that I will eventually do now that the year is over is probably take these little eyeshadows out of here and put them into some of my other Natasha Denona palettes that have eyeshadows that are either not ideal colors for me or that have ingredients like aluminum powder in them, because I do think that these eyeshadows are really terrific, and so I would like to see more eyeshadows like this. And then Nars came out with a summer palette that was supposed to be kind of a mixture of bronzer and eyeshadow, and so I got the lighter one of these, and this has 2 different colors of bronzer in it and a highlighter, and then supposedly 4 different colors of eyeshadow. And usually what people complain about with the Nars palettes is that they are too boring and that they always look alike. In this one, I just don't think it was very well conceived. And so first of all, it has 2 different colors of bronzer in them, but I don't think that the colors are all that much different from one another. And more importantly, I feel like with Nars that their bronzers are really designed to be so kind of gray that, at least for me, I could only use them as a contour, and I'm really not interested in contouring my face. And the other thing with this palette is that these eyeshadows, they're all quite pink, and I think that they really don't really work all that well as eyeshadows, but I think that some of these colors, or maybe all of these colors, could have been nice for me as blush or as a highlighter, and that if the palette had been designed differently, I could have probably just used all of these shades as eyeshadows, including these bronzer shades, and I could have used the eyeshadow shades that they have designated here as blush or highlighter shades, and I could have gotten actually a decent amount of use out of this. Whereas as it was, I really got no use out of it at all. I think that this highlighter color wasn't too bad, but other than that, I really don't feel like I got any use out of this palette at all, unfortunately. Now, a number of companies released new powder bronzers this year, and I liked a lot of them. In the case of this Armani bronzer, I think that this is a very nice case, first of all. I think this is a really gorgeous case, and I like the fact that it is fairly large, and it has this big mirror inside it, and it reminds me of the kind of makeup that people used when I was visiting Asia, and so I definitely feel like that is nice, and I think that the formula is fine. It does have some talc in it, but that wasn't an issue for me. But I did purchase both of the lighter shades of this bronzer, and I found that neither one of them worked very well with my skin tone, and I think that a lot of other people found that to be the case as well. And I still feel like this is probably not really designed for the American market or the European market, and that it's more designed for the Asian market. And I think that maybe the color selection that they have makes more sense for the Asian market, but I think that I would have liked to have seen this bronzer available in a color that was optimal for me. And I don't think that either of these lighter colors has worked for me very well at all. Now in 2023, Jones Road came out with a line of liquid bronzers, and so I have two of the shades of these that came out in 3 different shades. And Bobbi Brown said that the reason that they came out with these bronzers is because this is a product that her dad had been using since I think the 1970s, and that he found that it gave him a more youthful and confident look when his skin was a little bit tan. And so therefore she created these products to be the sort of thing that he could use or that other people could use. And so I tried those at the time, and I really thought that these were actually really nice. And I don't think that they worked very well for me when I was wearing a foundation, so I never wore it with those. But I did find that if it was especially the middle of summer and I wanted to put on just a little bit of a bronzing lotion that looked really natural, I could either put this right on my skin or I could mix it with a little bit of moisturizer and put it on that way. And I thought that as bronzers go, this one looks really natural and was very, very pretty. And so I wondered what other kind of bronzers were on the market that Bobbi Brown's dad might have been using or that might have been available as an alternative. And so I did look really hard at the time, and there was basically nothing except for the Drunk Elephant Debronzy drops, and those were very, 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 very irritating to my face, unfortunately. So I wasn't able to use those at all. And so the next year, of course, there were a whole bunch of bronzers that came out in liquid form, and I'm not sure if those people were copying the Jones Road one or if it was the case that Bobbi Brown is just always ahead of the curve, and that's why she got on this first. But in any case, I did purchase a bunch of different ones. I purchased the Say one, I purchased this one from Caliray, I purchased this one from Makeup by Mario, I purchased this one from Typology, and I also purchased this one from Glossier. And I guess what I will say is that even though I tried all of these different products and I tried using them all in different ways, I don't think I found that any of them were actually as good as the Jones Road one. I still like the Jones Road one better. If I had to pick the one that I think is second best, I think this little Glossier one, this one's not too bad. And this one actually might work okay on top of foundation, just like the Glossier blushes look okay on top of foundation, Cloud Paint blushes, and this is called the Cloud Paint Bronzer. So this is not a bad product, and I thought that this color was not too bad on me. This is the color Sail, I think. But in general, I think that the original version that I purchased last year, from Jones Road, that was actually really, really nice. Now, in terms of blush, I would say that probably the most controversial blush product of the year is the Hourglass Unreal Liquid Blush. So this is a product that quite a few people think is one of the best products of the year, and that they really like it because probably partially because it is very pigmented and because it does stay on the skin really well. In my case, I found it to be very frustrating in terms of both the container and also in terms of how the product has functioned. So this is a product that in order to use it, you need to turn the bottle over and then press this bottom button here until a drop comes out. And the drop that comes out tends to be give you quite a lot of blush that is quite pigmented. It tends to be very, very high pigment, much more so than I can generally use. And it also is the case that if you don't shake it really well, then you actually get a blush that is very oily and actually doesn't have an appropriate amount of pigment. So that is frustrating also. And so it's a whole little process that you need to use. And my feeling is that when I put it on my skin, I needed to put it on the back of my hand, take a tiny little bit of it on a brush and put it on my skin very gently. And it really tended to get kind of patchy looking. And even though it was a really pretty color, I do think this is a really pretty color. And this is a nice match for me. In terms of how it performed, I thought it performed really, really with quite a lot of difficulty. And I don't really have that much patience to spend that much time fighting with my blusher, trying to remember that I use it exactly correctly. But some people really like it, so it really depends on your preferences. Now, another product that I think was really innovative this year was this Caliray Blurry Blush. And I think that this was kind of interesting because I think it's very similar to a liquid lipstick in terms of the first ingredient that is in it, that is called isododecane. And so this has a very distinctive smell, which smells like a lot of liquid lipsticks do smell. The smell does dissipate fairly easily, but what I did find is that it seems to go on fairly patchy, and that spreading it around and getting it to look nice before it does dry down was not always something that I was able to do very easily. So I did get pretty frustrated with it. I think it probably is the case that if you can get it on your skin and it looks nice, that like this Hourglass blush, it probably is going to be pretty well lasting. And so if you're looking for a liquid blush that lasts longer than a lot of liquid blushes do, then this one could be one to consider. But I think it is a little bit on the strange side, and I really didn't like the way that it often looked patchy on my skin. And then in terms of highlighters, you know, Clinique came out with a product that they are calling a cheek and lip oil, and it is in the shade Black Honey, which I actually do kind of like. And I think as a lip oil, this is actually not a bad product at all. It doesn't have a fragrance. I think it looks pretty. I'll put on just a little bit of it on top of the lipstick that I'm already wearing, which is the Merit one in the shade Black Tie, which was a holiday shade for them. So let's put on a little bit more on top of that. And see, I think that as a lip oil, this is actually quite pretty, and it's not too messy. But I think that the idea of using this as a cheek oil was a little bit strange. This is the first time that I had ever heard of using a lip oil on the cheeks, and so I did give that a try. And I did notice that Bobbi Brown, which is obviously a sister company to Clinique, was offering cheek oils as well. And I just don't think that was a very good idea. And I think it was a good college try in terms of trying to create a new category, but I don't think that cheek oils are a very good idea, probably. And then another product that I had some high hopes about was this product from Surratt, which is called the Artistique Liquid Highlighter. And I thought that this would be nice because I really did like the Charlotte Tilbury blush wands and highlighter wands. I think that these are actually really nice products. And so I was kind of expecting the same thing from this Surratt product, but I haven't found this to be nearly as good in any way. So it came out very patchy, and I found that regardless of how long I turned it or how many times I turned it, I found that it often either had too little product or too much product, and that when I did put it on my skin, it tended to look patchy. And then when I got it on my skin, I found that it was too metallic. So in general, this is not a product that I've gotten any use out of it, and considering how expensive it was, that was a real disappointment. And next, let's talk about a product that I didn't actually purchase, that I feel really disappointed about anyway, and that is the new shade of the Westman Atelier Eye Pods in the shade Toujours. And so in the past, I had purchased some of those products, and I wouldn't say that they were the most exciting product that I have ever used, but I kind of did like them. I do think that you need to have the right brush in order to use them, and so I have been using the Westman Atelier Baby Cheeks blush brush that I think has worked really well in terms of just putting those eyeshadows on my eyes as a one-and-done product, and they haven't been irritating for my eyes, and I actually have liked them, and the look that I'm getting from those is kind of muted and understated, but I think that that is perfectly fine, and sometimes I really do like that look. So this year they came out with a new version, and this one is called Toujours, and it has 3 different shades of kind of a brown or beige color, and that is fine. I wouldn't have minded that at all. But what I did find before I even purchased the product is that some people who said that they had really liked the product in the past had found that their eyes were really irritated by this version. And so I did take a look at the ingredient list, and I found that there were 2 new ingredients in it that I do think could be really problematic to use on your eyes. One is just flavor, aroma, and I don't know quite what that is. And then the other one is a sunscreen booster that is a chemical sunscreen that is unregulated, that is called DESM. And so I'm not sure why they decided to put either of those ingredients in an eyeshadow. That seems like that was probably totally unnecessary. And I think that it is disappointing in general that while Westman Atelier used to really just have all products that I felt like universally I did really well with and that I could trust not to be irritating, I would say that more often than not these days that Westman Atelier, whenever they come out with a new product, that they do manage to put in something that is either really offensive to me in terms of how it smells, or most of the time that really is irritating for my skin. Now this is a palette that is by Skin by Kim, which is Kim Kardashian's line, which is partially owned by Coty, I guess. And I tried 2 products from Skin by Kim last year. I tried their lipsticks and their lip pencils, and I thought that both of those were really terrific, that I would go ahead and try this eyeshadow palette as well, because I think that the colors in this, if I could wear them, they would be actually quite attractive in terms of, they're kind of warm, but I think that they're kind of pretty colors, and I think that with my complexion that these could be really nice. But what I found with this particular palette is that all of these colors turned out to be much more saturated than I was anticipating, and that they also did not blend very well. And so once I got even a little bit of any of these colors on my eyes, I found it very difficult to make a decent eye look, and I often ended up taking off all of my eyeshadow and starting over, either trying to go much more gently with this palette or just giving up and not using it at all. So that was all very disappointing to me. I think that in general that this palette and also the Makeup by Mario, their regular matte palettes, that they do tend to have very saturated shades, and that the shades also don't blend very well. And then in this same vein, Natasha Denona recently released a new 5-pan mini eyeshadow palette that is all mattes. And I think that that actually could be interesting for me as well. But it includes a black shade and also a very dark brown shade. And I don't really see myself using either of those shades. I think that that dark brown shade is too reddish for me to want to use it as an eyeliner. And you know, recently I was watching a video by a fairly prominent YouTuber. Her name is Abby Young, and she said that she had always had this kind of problem with matte eyeshadow palettes, that she could never find one that she could purchase where she was able to use even very many of the shades at all, until she found a few Korean products that had a lot of different neutral type shades in them that she has been able to use. And I think that that is great that she found those palettes, but from what I have seen, those types of palettes, I have a very difficult time even finding out what the ingredients in them are, or I have a hard time getting my hands on those palettes because they're not widely available, or because they have ingredients in them that a lot of people don't want to use, like talc or aluminum powder or things like that. So I think that in terms of something that a lot of companies in this country, or that are marketing in this country, might want to consider is coming up with some palettes that might be more appropriate for people that don't do well with these saturated colors and that want things that are really easily blendable. And that's actually something that made me start thinking about this Kosas palette. And this is one that came out last year from Kosas, and it went off the market. I thought that they had totally permanently gotten rid of it, but it's actually on their website again now. And so I got out this one, and I actually kind of liked it at the time when I first got it, but there were some people that were so critical of this and said, oh, this is so boring. I don't know what Kosas is doing. This is really stupid. But I got this back out, and I tried it again, and I actually think this is not bad. This is actually about as close as I have found in terms of being a matte palette that I can actually use. So I actually feel like I can use all of the colors in this palette because they do tend to be a little bit more muted, and they do blend pretty easily. And it has this one shimmer shade in here, and this is not a shade that you absolutely have to use, but I think as a nude type of a look, at least on my peachy type complexion, I think it does go really well. But I'd like to see a few more companies come out with palettes that are designed more for light skin tones or for people that really want muted makeup. And certainly you don't want all of the palettes to be targeted towards that market. But I think that if some people could find palettes like that, it would make matte eyeshadows a lot easier for them to use. Now, Guerlain and their eyeshadow formulas this year, they have just been like kind of crazy because they came out with 2 different editions in packaging that I thought was really terrific, that I would have loved to have had. But the color stories that were in those eyeshadows are just kind of totally unwearable as far as I'm concerned. Now, Guerlain is another company where the eyeshadows tend to be overly pigmented and not all that easy to blend. So I do have one of those, and I have to be really, really careful with it. Otherwise, it does just look awful on me. But in this case, it not only is that presumably that kind of a formula that's difficult to blend, but they also came out with the color stories being like reds and dark black and a white and colors that I really wouldn't be able to wear at all. And especially if you're only creating one really nice eyeshadow palette, having it be a red color that very few people can actually wear just seems to be a bad business decision. So I would have loved to have invested in the Pucci eyeshadow palette. I think that that was really a gorgeous packaging. And the holiday palette, that one looked really beautiful too, and I wouldn't have minded using that. And in general, I'm not a big packaging fan, but sometimes there is packaging that I would like to have, but I'm not quite sure why people would make an eyeshadow palette in that packaging that is basically unwearable by probably 90% of the population. And so now let's talk about single eyeshadows, and I will start off by talking about what used to be one of my very favorite makeup products, which were the Laura Mercier eyeshadow sticks. And these in the past were made with some cyclic silicones in them, and to my understanding there have been some new regulations that are being passed or that have already been passed in Europe that are regulating the extent to which cyclic silicones can be used in products, and that this is for environmental reasons. And I am not certain at all that cyclic silicones are in the end going to be found to be any worse for the environment than either plastics or non-cyclic silicones like dimethicone, but so far there is more evidence that the cyclic silicones are problematic, and so therefore there have been some changes that have been made in the regulations there. And Laura Mercier is a company that seems to be particularly popular in Europe, and so I can definitely see why they would want to take the cyclic silicones out of their products, including the eyeshadow sticks. And so last year, I guess that would have been 2023, they took the matte versions and they reformulated those. And I thought that this was reasonably successful. I did pick up a couple of these products. I picked up one that was a blue color and one that was called sepia. And I feel like these were went on my eyes fairly easily. And the blue one I felt did not blend as well as I would have liked, but I'm not sure I ever had the equivalent color in the old version of it, so I'm not sure if that one was better or not. What I did see is that they now have a 6-month usage life on them, and they used to be 18 months, and so that did make me concerned that they were going to be dried out really fast. Now, it does seem to be the case that they are holding up pretty well, and it's been well over 18 months at this point since I purchased one of them, and I don't feel like they're dried up or performing any differently than they were to begin with, so that part has at least been good. And then it took them almost another year before they came out with the shimmer versions of these. And again, these new shimmer versions have a 6-month usage life, and they don't have the cyclic silicones in them. And so far, I do seem to be very disappointed in terms of how these shimmer versions have turned out. And so these really do not seem to be blending as well as the old versions. They seem to be more patchy, and they don't seem to be as pretty. And the other thing that I did notice is that most of the shades now include aluminum powder in them, whereas none of the previous versions included aluminum powder. And my guess here is that they weren't able to get a version of them that was really pretty, that did not include the cyclic silicones in them, and so therefore they added the aluminum powder as kind of a desperate attempt to make them look better. But in my opinion, they still don't look that great, and of course I can't use the ones that have the aluminum powder in them. Now, one product that I think has been a good substitute for me in terms of wanting to use something that was performing similarly to the eyeshadow sticks, but that was better for the environment and more easily available, are the Ma Beauty Cream Clay eyeshadows. And I have had very, very good success with those in the past in terms of their matte versions. And those do not include any silicones at all, and they do not include any plastics at all. And I really like those because they do look nice on my eyes, and also because I don't feel like I need to put down a primer first. I feel like I can just take a little bit of it and smear it on my eyes, or use a little brush and brush it onto my eyes, and they do look really, really nice. And so this year they came out with some shimmer versions, and they worked with this with a YouTube makeup artist named Shelby Wilson. And so they came out with a couple new shimmer eyeshadows to begin with, and then they introduced a few more. And so I purchased the first two. There's one here that is kind of a champagne color, and I have one that's kind of a lavender color. And on the one hand, I do think that these are really, really pretty on my eyes. On the other hand, I think that these are a little bit less desirable for me because they seem to be quite translucent. And so when I put them on my eyes, I feel like I can see the darkness and other kinds of issues that I have on my eyelids. And so therefore I do need to put a primer down, and that is an additional step that makes it a lot less convenient for me to just throw them on and get out the door. And I also think that these did emphasize the texture of my eyelids a bit more than the cream clay eyeshadows did, and more than a lot of the eyeshadow sticks do. I do think that for people that don't have those kinds of issues on their eyelids, that they look really pretty. They certainly look very pretty on Shelby Wilson, and I've seen other people try these on and they are very pretty. I think for me, I probably won't buy any more from this formula, and I think that maybe if they keep working on it, they could come up with a shimmer formula that would work for me, but this one I think is just okay. Now, in terms of mascaras, I am a person that finds mascaras to be kind of on the frustrating side, so I used to especially object to them because a lot of them did irritate my eyes. And now, fortunately, there are an awful lot of mascaras that are on the market that are not irritating for me, so that has been a real development that has occurred just over the past couple of years, so I've been really happy about that. At this point, I still am feeling like I mostly am liking mascaras that are either sort of tubing formulas or that are performing similarly to tubing formulas, even if they are not actually creating tubes. So my favorite mascara is the I Want You mascara from Westman Atelier, and I've liked the Caliray mascara, and I think the Merit mascara is nice. And so when other mascaras come on the market, I can be really disappointed by them, especially if they require a lot of work, or if they tend to get smeary, or I have to constantly be fiddling with them. So the one mascara that I tried this year that I got kind of frustrated with is from Ritual de Fille, and this one is called Levitation Lash, and it's almost like a paste. And so when I take this out of the container, I have always found myself needing to carefully scrape off the additional product that is on this wand. And even when I did that, I felt like it tended to get pretty goopy on my eyelashes, and that I felt like I needed to spend a lot of time trying to make this work. And the other mascara that frustrated me a little bit this year was this Lisa Eldridge Kitten Lash Mascara, just because I felt like it was a little bit irritating. Merit came out with a new brow pencil. It is one of those really, really skinny brow pencils. And what I found with this is that it broke very, very easily, and when I tried to use it on my eyebrows, I didn't feel like it drew on anything that looked very realistic, even if I was going to be adding a brow gel in addition to this. And it's also very, very expensive. So in terms of a cost per gram basis, this is much more expensive than really any other eyebrow pencil that is on the market. And I have heard of a few people that have liked this, especially if they're just looking to fill in a very small area of their brows. I don't think that it's probably appropriate for people who have issues like mine, where my brows are really, really sparse and you need to be doing a lot of filling in. But even those people that already have pretty good brows and were just using this for some little touch-ups, they seem to be saying that they were using this one up really fast and needing to buy it over and over again. And so that is another negative. And Victoria Beckham has a new brow gel out, and this is called the Feather Fix, and it is described as a liquid lifting brow gel. So I wasn't quite sure what that meant, and maybe I should have investigated more before I purchased it, but this is what the wand looks like. And so it just has a few little bristles on one side, and on the other side it has just a straight piece here. And I think that this is really not designed for my eyebrows, which are almost non-existent and which have a lot of really light hairs that I need to darken. And I think that this one may be better for people that are trying to control their brows, maybe. I'm not sure. But in any case, this has definitely not been the right product for me. And Dior came out with a new line of pencil lip liners. They are called the Rouge Dior Contour. And so I thought that when I looked at the ingredient list and when I looked at the product, that they were going to probably be similar to the Chanel lip liners, and those are really my favorite lip liners. So I did purchase one of these, and it does have a little brush on one end, so that part of it is nice. But in terms of how this is performed, I have found that this really hasn't worked very well on my lips. I feel like it has been very difficult for me to not get a really patchy look. What I tend to do with lip liners is not just to use them to line my lips, but also to fill in the color and then to put some other kind of product over the top of them. And I found it very difficult to do that with this particular pencil. I don't think that it smoothed out on my lips very easily, and I also found that it was a little bit irritating for my lips, and so I definitely won't be using this one. And it's just as expensive as the Chanel one, but I don't think it's anywhere near as good, probably even if you're not using the pencil to fill in your whole lips, and even if you're not thinking about the irritation issue. I just think the Chanel ones are much, much better. And then Kosas also came out with some lip liners, and there are a whole bunch of different shades of those. And so I went to Sephora and I tried on all of those different shades on my hand. And what I found was that right after I put them on my hand, I'm like, oh, look at all these different colors. This is giving you so much choice. But that within about 5 or 10 minutes, when I just walked around the store and I just left my hand alone, pretty soon all of the colors looked exactly the same. So I think that they are really not holding up very well, and that if you think that you're going to be getting a specific color from these, that they're really not going to hold up like that on your lips. And I did find that to be the case on my lips as well, that when I first put this product, the one that I have here that's more of a neutral shade on my lips, that at first it did look really nice, but then it just kind of faded away into blondness. So that was a disappointment. There's also a red one, and the red one did not fade like this. That actually did stay pretty strong red on my hand, and it does stay a pretty strong red on my lips, but I don't feel like it performs nearly as well as the other good red lip liners that I have used. And I think that if you're going to use a red lip liner, it had probably better be performing pretty well in terms of drawing a nice line on your lips and staying nicely on your lips, because that's sort of a foundation of a red lip look for me. And so that didn't work either. So I think that Kosas does have some really good products, but this is not one of them. And then Lisa Eldridge came out with a second line of lip pencils. So her first line of lip pencils are called Enhance and Define, and those are meant to match her True Velvet lipsticks. And then the second line is supposed to be the color of your lips. And these are called Sculpt and Shade. And so I purchased one of these, and I purchased it in the color 1C. And I thought that the way that it went on my lips was fairly nice, and I thought that the performance of it was pretty nice, but this one actually did irritate my lips, unfortunately, so I haven't really been able to use that. Now, in terms of lipsticks, the big disappointment that I have had this year that I feel kind of bad about leading other people astray is the Glossier Generation G lipsticks. So these were actually introduced at the end of 2023, but I didn't really pick up on them until almost the end of the year, and I thought that they were a really good reformulation at the time, because I do like the idea of these lipsticks, that they are a matte type of a lipstick, but that they're more like a stain, and so the pigment is not very high. And I thought that at the time that they were really pretty, and that unlike the previous formulation of the Glossier Generation G lipsticks, they did not have any scent, and I did find the previous version's scent to be really objectionable, and so I was really happy about that, and I thought that these performed really well. But as the year has gone on and I have tried these lipsticks again and again, I have found that they have totally deteriorated, both in terms of how they smell, so they have gone quite rancid throughout the year, and to the point that I can't use them at all for that reason. And I also feel like they've gotten quite dry, and so they are not performing as well in terms of how they go on my lips or in terms of how they look as they used to. And I feel really bad because at the time I gave them a really, really good review, and I said that more people should be paying attention to them. And in the end, it turned out that this was a total failure of a reformulation, and the reviews on the Sephora website and even the Glossier website are really, really negative, and I think for good reason. So I apologize to people who purchased this product as a result of my good review, because it turned out that they did not work out as well as I was hoping. Now, Jones Road came out with a line of lippy sticks. So in the past, they just had one that was untinted, and it has a couple of little bit of essential oils in it, and I thought that that one was okay. But when they reformulated them, they added a whole bunch of tints to them, and they also added some additional processed natural fragrance to it. And as it turns out, this is one of the more irritating products that I've used on my lips in quite a while, at least, of the products that I have decided to try, because I have a confidence that they might be okay. In this case, this is probably the most irritating product that Jones Road has offered, and that's saying a lot, because I also was irritated by, for instance, the Miracle Balm and the foundation, because those also have some essential oils in them. So I think that this would be a really good product, and that I would have really enjoyed it if it hadn't had those fragrances in it. I think that it's very pretty, and I think it's nice to have a little lip balm that's really casual like this, but unfortunately this one did not work for me at all. This Sarah Creole lipstick, which is called Speak for Yourself, I am quite disappointed about this one, because I think in terms of how it looks on my lips, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. And that when I especially have looked at the footage of me using it on camera, I do think that it makes my lips look really smooth and really pretty, and it goes on really nicely, and it stays in place really nicely without any trouble at all. So that has been really terrific. The problem with this lipstick is that they put that same ingredient that is in the Victoria Beckham concealer, which is called ethylene brassylate. So this is a musk scent that DuPont created in the 1940s, and I feel like it does have a fairly strong scent, and it's the kind of thing that the more I use the product, the more annoying it gets, until it starts to give me headaches, or in the case of this lipstick, it starts to make me feel a little bit ill. And so I really am not going to be using this product anymore, which is really sad, because apart from that one particular fragrance ingredient that they put in it, I think that this has been a terrific formula, and I don't see any reason why they needed to put that in there, and especially since they're supposed to be a clean beauty company, that's just baffling to me. And then another lipstick where I had almost exactly the same experience as the Sarah Creel lipstick was the Westman Atelier lipstick. So this is called Lip Suede. And actually, I think that this one was a little bit innovative because it is a lipstick that does not include any silicones in it. And I think that in terms of how it looks on my lips, I think it looked okay, considering that there's no silicones in it. I don't think it looked as nice as the Sarah Creel one, but considering the no silicone issue, I think that that was an accomplishment for them. But unfortunately, this one smelled to me just as bad as the Sarah Creel one, or maybe even worse. And the ingredient that is in this is ethyl vanillin. And it's a little bit odd because usually I don't really like ethyl vanillin or regular vanillin in a lipstick, but I can tolerate it on occasion. And this one, this version of it smelled particularly bad to me and tasted particularly bad to the point that it really was not wearable for me at all. And I have heard some other people, such as Lexi Jung on YouTube, who have also objected to the scent. There's been quite a few people who have talked about that being really terribly objectionable to them, and I would agree about that. And then Lisa Eldridge, again, a lot of the disappointment that I have with this brand has to do with my high expectations for them rather than because the products are really problematic. So they introduced a new line of lipsticks that are called Baume Embrace, which is a very moisturizing little lip balm in lipstick form. And I don't think that the scent or the taste of these is anywhere near as bad as that Westman Atelier one or the Sarah Creel one. I think this is just kind of average. And if I compare this to other products that I have tried this year that have had vanillin in them, like for instance the MAC lipsticks, I think this is probably pretty similar. And so I really feel a little bit bad complaining about them, but still, every time Lisa Eldridge releases a product, I get very excited about it, and I think that it's going to be a core part of my makeup collection. And in this case, I've used these a few times to demonstrate for the camera, and then I haven't really felt like reaching for them again. And then in terms of liquid lip products, one product that I was hearing pretty good reviews of is the Kulfi. I think it's called Lassie Lips. And so I did give this a try. And I feel like this one just had kind of a bitter taste to it. And so I was kind of disappointed in this. And again, I think it's because I was probably expecting too much from this product. But I don't see myself using this one. And then Ritual de Fille introduced at the beginning of this year a line of products that are called Thornbite, and they are described as peptide plump cream lip oil. And so I gave one of these a try. I thought that this looked really pretty on my lips, and I think that it seemed like it was not bad for my lips, but this one has I think ginger root oil or strong ginger root extract in it, and I'm just not a fan of ginger root. And so this one seemed to me just to not be appealing in terms of using it, and this is not something that I think probably bothers a lot of people, but for me that has kept me from using it. And I think that it's a little disappointing just because if they hadn't put that particular ingredient in this, I think this would be one of the best liquid lip products on the market. And then finally, RMS is a brand that pretty much across the board I really love. They do so many different innovative things, and I think that so many of their products are really terrific. I think that the product that they have been having the most difficulty with is one that is called Liplights, and this is a lip balm that is in sort of semi-liquid form, and it was originally released in this little tube, and the tube is metal, and it is the same tube I think that they sell their little eyeshadows in. And so I picked this up, and my experience with this, I think, is that this product is one that tends to be really affected by temperature. And so if it gets a little bit cold, it's very difficult to remove from the tube. But if it gets a little bit warmer, then it will come out of the tube really easily. And so I think that there have been occasions when I really squeezed this tube hard to get it out when it's cold, and then later on it's gotten warm and it's like squirted out like a volcano. And then eventually what I found is that it has this tiny little top top on it, which does tend to fall off on the floor and get lost. But in addition, this little piece of plastic is just stuck to the top of it, almost like it's just glued on. And when there was pressure from this lip balm that came out of here, then it kind of pushed the top of this off, and so I stopped using this entirely. This also has vanillin on the ingredient list, and I don't think it tastes as bad as a lot of vanillin does to me, and I wonder if it could be a naturally sourced form of vanillin, like Ma Beauty uses vanillin that is from the vanilla pods, and so maybe it's something like that. I don't think it tastes really bad. I think I would prefer it if it didn't have that vanillin flavor in it, and this is the only RMS product that actually lists vanillin on the ingredient list. Everything else is using real vanilla extract. But in any case, I definitely fought a lot with this product and gave up on it. So they have come out with a new version, and the new version came with this little bag as a little gift with purchase during the Green Friday week for RMS. That was right before Black Friday, and so I got this little bag, and I also got this little lipstick. And the lipstick is in a different container, and so it has just a top that comes off like this, and it has a regular little applicator that's plastic that you can just put a little bit on your lips and then smooth it into your lips, either by putting your lips together or by brushing it on with this piece of plastic. And so I think that's an improvement over having to put it on with your fingers. Unfortunately, this is a very strange product because it is green when it comes out of the tube, and I kind of found that to actually be a little bit intriguing. And I wouldn't have actually minded if it was green and it was just very slightly green, and but it mostly looked clear. But what instead happened is that this has color changing pigment in it, and so of course it becomes bright pink, and so I don't really like that color of bright pink. I think it's not very subtle. So I imagine that probably that all of the shades of this product are going to be in this new packaging eventually, and so I'm kind of looking forward to that. I would give it another try if it was something other than the color changing version, and I kind of like the way that original color that I had, which was kind of a coral color, I did kind of like the way it looked on my lips. It was just a real pain to put on, and this packaging was such a failure. And so I will give that a try when it comes out in the new colors. In terms of this free gift that they gave, this bag, I don't hate to look a gift horse in the mouth, but on the other hand, they're selling this bag along with this lip gloss at a fairly high price on their website now. And so I just thought I would mention that this bag has kind of driven me crazy, because it has this padlock on here, and so what you are supposed to do, you can't really close this bag unless you actually put the padlock on, because you can put it like this, but then it doesn't stay. So in order to make it really store anything in it, you need to put this padlock on here. But if you put the padlock on, then you need the key to open it, and the key doesn't really stay in the lock. And I'm not very good at remembering what I do with things like keys to products that don't really need keys on them. And I'm sure that if I put this padlock on here and I put it away to store my stuff, I would never be able to find that key, and I'd never be able to get it open. So I think this is a little bit weird, and I think that I probably will try this again in more colors, but I don't really approve of this color changing product. That's not one that I really like very much. So thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of the video. And if you have had any beauty disappointments in terms of things that you have tried or things that have happened this year, then please let us know what those have been in the comments section. In addition, if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, then I hope you will go ahead and do that. And if you like this video, then I hope you will hit like, because supposedly that helps the algorithm and helps my channel to get more subscribers. So thank you very much for watching, and Coco and I love you very much. Happy New Year. Goodbye. Ba-da-ba-da-da-ba,